Thank you. Everybody eating already? Because you look a little hungry to me. Now, I got to tell you, I haven't been around here for 28 years. When I left, everything was in good shape. The cities were thriving, the schools were prospering, Republicans sat down with Democrats, the lion lay down with the lamb, and boy, things have gone south on us. So the first point I want to get over to everybody, I didn't create this problem. You people have been actively involved. Maybe you're part of the responsibility here, right? Remember, just the most takeaway here is, as this mess built up, as the evasions, the tricks, and the gimmicks, I was down there in Oakland, or I was over in Calcutta with Mother Teresa, or maybe over in years before with Linda Ronstadt in Africa. See, I cover a wide range of interests. We're not going to narrowcast. Anyway, seriously, I'm glad to be back, and I think the people put me back here, not because they see a long career ahead of me. In fact, I'd almost have to say my future is behind me, so I can speak with some honesty. And everywhere I go, I'm confronted with people saying, no, don't do that to us. And I appreciate, I've been reading all those blog entries, and you're all riled up. Actually, you look pretty good to me. I mean, you know, you look relatively benign and a few smiles on your face. So, yeah, we got some issues here. We got some issues because what it is we want, and in many cases what we need, the taxpayers don't always want to provide the funds to actually make it work. And there's this gap. And the gap is not always well understood. In fact, in one survey I saw, when people were asked, pick a number, a percentage of how much of what state government is doing is wasted. And the number most frequently picked was about 48%. 48% waste. Now, no one in here, I think, would think that. There's basic services, very important activities that are taking place in counties and cities and schools and fire districts and police departments, as well as the state. So we know there's some basic functions. But we also know there's a $25 billion gap at the state level. And next year, if we don't do anything, it's a $20 billion gap. And the year after that, it's $20 billion, as far as the eye can see. And it's not that California is so different. They've got huge budget gaps in New York and in Arizona. Arizona, which is a pretty conservative place, not given to radical activities, at least depending upon how you say radical. They do some, yeah, I guess they're a little radical. But they sold their capital. I mean, that's pretty amazing, selling the capital, some leaseback deal. You know, you can finance anything these days. Maybe they'll be mortgaging the flags next, because people just have a hard time, you know, biting the bullet and either tax or cut or some combination, and that's hard to do. Illinois is in deep trouble too. The federal government. Federal government is expanding our military activities abroad and is paying for it with tax cuts, and paying for it with tax cuts with people who have every year for the last 25 years been getting a larger share of the national wealth. So the idea is the way to pay for huge expenditures is to reduce revenue. And that doesn't work. And we know it is ultimately going to come aground, and we're all going to have to pay for it. But it's very difficult at the city, the county, the state, or the federal government to look truth in the eye and say, okay, there it is. Let's deal with it honestly. And so that's really my job. I think people elected me for no other reason that I've been around, I've seen it before, I can tell it like it is. And I'm willing to kind of walk down that road, hopefully with as many of you as possible, or walk there myself. But my road ahead is to understand where we are, understand what some of the options are, and then just to report to the people and tell them like it is. I don't see this as a time for turf wars and state fighting local or different groups all vying for a diminishing pie. Of course, as I say diminishing pie, I have to recognize that California is not a diminishing economy. It's a 1.9 trillion by some estimates. 1.9 trillion. When I started out as governor, it was about 150 billion. So we're on a trajectory of growth that temporarily has been slowed down. In fact, for a couple of years, it actually reversed. But we're growing, and we're growing this year, and we'll grow. So we're a powerful state with the people, the businesses, the environment, the access to the Pacific, all the technology. There's a lot there. But we got a gap, and we got high unemployment. We got people losing their homes and all the rest of it. So we got to come to terms with what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is this gap. And I've studied it, and I've tried to figure out what the heck can we do about it. And wherever I look, it's not pretty. It's not pretty to say to an elderly person or someone blind or disabled and say, we're going to take away $15 a month from your very small stipend every month. Or to take a mother with 2 kids who's living on $690 a month and say, we're going to have to take $90 from you. We're doing that. Or to tell the university, we've got to take back, we can't give you the $500 million that you were expecting. Or the developmentally disabled. I mean, I look all across it. None of it looks good. But tell me how else to draw the lines. And it's pretty much a zero-sum game right now. Going forward, we'll have growth, we'll have revenue. But in the short term, for the next few years, we got to make tough decisions. And if we don't do redevelopment, then what do we take? Do we take more from the university? Do we start cutting into the public schools, which have been cut year after year? So I think we have to, all of us, rise above our own particular perspective, get out of the comfort zone, and try to think as Californians first. You know, that sense of being a part of and committed to California. I thought of our president, John Kennedy, when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And what can we do, not for state government, but what can we do for California, which is this group of people, 38 million strong, incredible diversity, rich and poor, all manner of people now being led by legislators that are pretty divided and ideologies that are completely incompatible. We've got to find the common ground. And if we can rise out of our narrow perspectives, we will converge around some basic ideas. And that's what I've tried to make the budget. And I understand, and I have to say something about the whole redevelopment debate. It says, looks like the state is trying to take your money. Well, in fact, if we go back to the beginning of redevelopment, it was to take a little bit of local property tax and to put it into slum clearance. That was the original idea. It was very controversial. Could you even have condemnation? Could you take private property? If you go back to the early debates in the 40s and the 50s. Well, we have it. And in some counties, in some jurisdictions, it's a huge percentage of the property tax. And how do we make up for it? Well, we make up for it by the state backfilling and giving money to the counties and the schools and the fire districts. But the state's $25 billion in the red. And so here we're taking money, we're taking a property tax, which is local, and we're putting it over into some very good things. When I was mayor of Oakland, I built a lot of good things. I liked redevelopment. I didn't quite understand it. It seemed kind of magical. It was the money that you could spend on stuff that they wouldn't otherwise let you spend. You know, I put a lot into the Fox Theater, got this beautiful theater, you know, tens of millions of dollars. I don't know that I would have got it any other way. So I'm sure glad I got it built before this damn budget came out. So you got to move fast in this business. That's why delay is the enemy. And anyway, well, we weren't in that much of a trouble. We were in that big of a mess because we all are subject to hope and desire and wish thinking. And a lot of wish thinking, a lot of magical thinking went on when people said, gee, housing, it's never going down. It's always going up. And by the way, you don't even need a down payment. You don't even have to tell your true income. And people are going to get rich on Wall Street, and a lot of people are going to get homes. Well, that was a lot of delusion. And when that came crashing down, so did the revenues. And those revenues really shrunk from well over 100 billion at the state to maybe 83 billion, all in the space of 12 to 18 months. So we're short of money. And cities are short of money. And schools are laying off teachers. I mean, we're all in a tough situation. So we've got to think of as Californians first, not just everybody fighting over everything else. And so my thought on the redevelopment, that's one of the pieces. So our cuts to nursing homes, and cuts to hospitals, and cuts to doctors, and it's cuts all over the place. So if you can redraw it in a better way, go ahead. But I think we all have to see, when we move one piece, what happens to the other pieces, and what happens to the state, what happens to California, and where do we go in the future. We know our kids are not doing as well as they should on national exams. We know that Latino and African American kids are way behind other kids. We know the poorer districts are not as good as the wealthier districts. So I don't want to take more money from schools. I like to put more money in schools. And so that's just where we are. And where do we get the money? Well, there's the rub. And this proposal that I have is to basically restore what was before, namely local property taxes go to local functions, whether it's fire or police or schools or whatever the cities and the counties are doing. And I just want to mention this, just to give you a number. The distribution to counties in the following year would be 289 million rather. Cities would get 495 million. Special districts 105 million. Schools $1 billion. It's a total of 1.9 billion. We wouldn't take any funds from redevelopment that are needed to service existing debts. We're going to leave the funds that are accumulated for the affordable housing but not yet spent. And the pass-throughs that cities have been getting, we would also recognize that too. So I think you ought to take a look at it. I'm not saying you're going to like it, but let's look at it. Let's look at what our alternatives are. Because I put together a package to extend some taxes and to make some massive, very painful cuts. Some groups of legislators have said the problems of California are not our problems. They're the Democrats' problems, or they're the governor's problems. Well, actually, we're all implicated. We're all in it. And however we got here, this is where we are. And we've got to figure out how to work through it. And so I have proposed, and we're developing this idea, that you could have an economic development zone, a type of redevelopment, but put it out to a vote of the people, lower the threshold to 55%, and create, if that's what the people want, for many of these projects. I know they're good, but it's also good that a family can support themselves when they've been thrown out of work, when they're on relief, or an elderly person who no longer can work and gets SSI. That's important. All the parts of the budget are equally good. And that's why we have to make the tough choices. So I don't think this is going to be easy. A lot of people are saying no taxes. We will not extend it. We want the taxes to go away. Well, if that happens, of course, we have to double whatever the cuts are. So instead of 12, we're talking 24. I mean, and that's really tough. Where else are we going to look? I mean, there are not too many other places. So California, like much of the country, and like the nation's government itself, is facing a dilemma. And I would just say we have to face it with understanding, with generosity, and without any kind of narrow perspective. This is where we are. And sooner or later, we got to pay the piper. We got to pay up. We got to live within our means. When I ran for office, I said, we're going to live within our means. We're going to turn as much power and decision to local government, and we wouldn't have any taxes, more taxes, unless the people vote for them. That was the plan. And that's what they voted for, and that's what I'm delivering. So I look forward to working with you and seeing whatever things we can do, whatever ideas you have. And I have to tell you, none of the choices are particularly easy. And we're not there yet. We may not, we haven't got the votes for the budget. And you may win on redevelopment. Then we take something else away. And then maybe the wheels come off. I mean, we don't know exactly how this will all unfold. I'm going to do everything I can to get the budget proposal that I made through the legislature with the vote of the people